Okay. So recently I was asked to write an article on hope by Buddha Dharma Review. And the question posed was, is hope, a kind of waste of time? Does it stop us living in the present moment? Is it unnecessary? Or is hope something that we all need? And, that kind of gives us greater momentum in our practice to do good things and to fight the good fight. And I thought about it. It's a pretty interesting one, isn't it, for Buddhists? Like, do we need hope? Sorry, I'm trying not to miss someone's face. Okay, someone's beautiful face. Just moving the phone. Uh, yeah, is it? To me, hope seems more like a Christian concept. And it's a dualistic thing. Like, there's hope and then there's fear. But for unenlightened beings, I think hope is kind of necessary, somewhat necessary. But once you start meditating, once you get a taste of Buddha nature, hope becomes less necessary, I think. And I think hope is a part of desire, which in Buddhism is, this kind of craving is ultimately a source of suffering. But once again, there's the ultimate teaching and there's the relative teaching, and we all need a little bit of hope to kind of get through life, really. But what I think in a deeper sense hope is, if hope comes, like hope mixed with equanimity, the idea that this too shall pass, and one day at a time, and just knowing that however bad you feel, however hopeless you feel, it's only temporary. That to me seems more like a wise hope. And I think when I think of hope, I think of Martin Luther King, and I think of his great "I have a dream" speech. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the former slaves and the sons of slave owners or the grandsons of slave owners will sit together at the table of brotherhood. And like, I just think of all the stuff he was going through, little girls being shot, and people of color as second-class citizens, in terrible poverty, not able to be safe, not able to be equal citizens, all the atrocities going on around him, and the fact that he could write something like that, with such power and passion. It just makes you want to give your whole life to social justice, that speech. And then you look at the arc of how his life played out, and how much heartbreak he must have felt when all the change that we hoped would happen in the 60s, that we thought finally, social structures are breaking apart, systems of privilege are being challenged, materialism is being questioned, maybe something wonderful can happen. That's what Bhikkhu Bodhi said. He said, we all thought, it was the great turning and like something fantastic's going to happen, and unfortunately it didn't quite play out, and all these problems are still with us. And you look at the last speech Martin Luther King wrote, and he said, I've seen the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but I've seen it. So it's much more tempered. And there's a little bit of an edge of heartbreak in that, that good deeds, hope, justice may take a lot longer than our lifetime, And when I first started working in India, I kind of had this wonderful, I'm just going to change the camera. Such an annoying person to do that, aren't I? I had this great idea that, maybe a delusion you could say, that I could change the poverty in India. I don't think it was just coming from a white savior point of view. Like, it was just a very optimistic, idealistic young person. Not because I was white. That might have, people, you certainly do understand the concept of white privilege in India, because people do defer to you and listen to you more, which is very uncomfortable. And I realized there were so many historical reasons for that, and how it wasn't right, and that I had to be very careful about how I approached people in India, and that I consulted all the local people, and that we worked together in a group, and that it wasn't just about me. But as a young idealistic person in India in the beginning, as a nun, I really felt people would gather together, and if they saw a monk or a nun, they felt excited, and you'd go on a rally, and everybody was there, and you just feel like you could change society and things could change. But here I am a decade later, and it's like, that ain't gonna happen very quick. And atrocities are still happening. 5,000 years of atrocities against people of lower caste and women. And although perhaps in urban areas the situation of women is better, and for what poor Dalit women, nothing has really changed very much. So, people are still being hung on trees and gang raped and lynched, and a lot like what happens in America, in certain parts of the country. And when will the mountain the rough places of the earth be laid low, and when shall the valleys be exalted, and when will the poor find succor and grace that they've been promised? So if you're someone who believes in social justice, you do need hope, but it's very depressing when you realize this battle may take a really long time. And that's why I think we need a bit of equanimity, because justice takes time, compassion takes time. I mean, you look at someone like the Dalai Lama, he's been fighting for social justice his whole life, justice for Tibet. And he's elderly, he'll probably never get back to Tibet, but what he has done is make a place of refuge inside his own heart, his true home. And he's also, because of the power of his practice and his compassion, made a place of refuge, even though it's slightly precarious, for Tibetans in India, and inspired all of the world. So maybe you don't have to have a perfect world before you can be a good person. Maybe by being a good person, you'll create a perfect world, But don't bank on everything it's samsara, it's imperfect. But that's not an excuse to do nothing, which is a kind of standard response from a lot of Buddhists who don't want to do anything about, or don't want to know about, the problems of the world. Maybe there are people who were in activism and they're just really tired, and they don't want to know, they really tried and they burnt out. And that's okay for a while to just go away from it and work on yourself, because it is really hard to work together as a group. It's hard to change the world. And you do realize that if you don't work on yourself, if you don't do the inner work, group work and community is so hard, so challenging, I mean, I know there are mothers who are like, I really want to make a better world for my child. And it's like, but I can hardly bring up this one little person who's taking all my energy, So it's like, how can I save the world when I've got this, But the thing is, it's like, there's a beautiful song by Donovan, and Donovan's this kind of hippie folk singer, and he made this, there was this beautiful movie made in the 60s about the life of St. Francis, who is basically the patron saint of hippies, nature, poor people, I don't know. But he's pretty cool, social dissident who left everything, left his wealthy family and started living on the streets and helping poor people and lepers. And it says, if you want your dream to be, build it strong and slowly. Do few things, but do them well. Heartfelt works are holy. Day by day, stone by stone, build your secrets slowly. Day by day, you'll know God's glory or nature's glory. I'm not sure, but you get the idea. So the thing is, We may not get there to the mountaintop, but what we're doing is building a legacy of justice, a legacy of compassion. We're standing with people who are oppressed in solidarity. We know that we're on the right side of history. We may not, we may push the world to the brink of extinction, humanity. We don't know. But what we can do is live each day putting the stones in the right way for the world that we want. And, are those people that we see as our adversaries inherently evil? I don't think so. I just think they're incredibly deluded, perhaps narcissistic. They're damaged by the way they were raised, by trauma, by a system of greed that we live in, the idea that things are more important than people, the idea that profit is more important than saving someone's life with medical care, reducing someone to a number, like, should we help them because they're disabled? Should they get these resources? Should we let them into the country? And it's so shocking, these kind of decisions that are made about the value of a human life. What we can do is what we can do, and what we can do is try to build change in our local area, and join together with those voices that we hear that are sane, compassionate, wise voices like Greta Thunberg and whatever progressive. I mean, that's the thing, the conservatives have organized and they've elected leaders that are very different to how some of us might envision a peaceful future. So, but it's really interesting because I know people who vote conservative, who are feminists and who care about the environment, who are not bad people, So it's just, how can we get together on crucial issues, and build a better world? It's very hard. It's very hard to bring together disparate people and views. And if anything, with social media, the views have polarized, and even people's sources of information have become slightly tainted. People can't really tell the difference between fake news and, people are motivated by fear. So many of the wars we had were completely unnecessary. It's so sad that we just keep repeating these stupid mistakes, and that we keep believing really, maybe in the past when you really didn't know history and you weren't properly informed and you didn't know people of color close up because they were far away from you, there was an excuse to be afraid of something foreign. But there really is no excuse anymore because these people are like right next door to us and we know they're just like us. They just have slightly different food and slightly different cultural beliefs, but they're essentially human and the same. And, we can't keep maintaining this worldview that, that we're right, and pretending like this kind of cultural amnesia that we forget how we got our privilege, through land theft and colonization and so forth. Anyway, that's about hope. So I think hope is necessary for unenlightened beings, but a bit of, we want to move away gradually as we deepen our practice. We want to move more towards a non-duality of like equanimity, of seeing this suffering, this whatever unpleasant experiences I'm having arise, abide, and dissolve. They're impermanent. And even the enjoyment I have, if you cling to it, there is a certain kind of suffering and anxiety that comes. It's like the heroin addict or the meth addict, or the alcoholic. The first time is so fun. Or the relationship addict, the first time is such a hit and so fun, and you just, all those holes in you were filled and you feel complete. But all the things you have to do to get the hit is unpleasant, and gradually you realize it's a hell. Unhealthy relationships are hell. A job that pays a lot that you don't really like is hell. Addiction is hell. So many things. Even you join a religion and you think it's fantastic, and then you realize it's not as great as you thought. That you start to see the holes in the sangha. So, I think part of growing up and getting mature is losing our rigid idealism and growing into a more mature, pragmatic idealism of knowing, well, everybody has a little bit of good and bad in them. No one is completely perfect. Nothing is completely perfect. But how can we grow some roses with this pile of crap? Uh, you know, how can we, that maybe we'll never get it all together. Maybe it'll never be perfect, but how can we make something good out of what we have today? How can we move towards something good in the future, while being fully present in the now? Because maybe this is all we have as well. Like when I was younger, I was so future oriented, like I was just willing to sacrifice everything in the future, everything in the now to get to this ideal of enlightenment. Relationships, people, they don't really matter. I'm going to go and meditate. My mother, she's making noise. She's so annoying. Mom, shut up. I'm meditating, and it was like, I was not being kind, and I was not putting time into relationships and people and living a balanced life. I was just like, this is miserable and I've got to get out of it. A kind of disassociated, spiritual bypassing approach to life. If anything is uncomfortable and not perfect, family barbecue, I'm having an existential crisis. There is no meaning here. I need to go and meditate. I still feel a bit like that at family barbecues. But I am able to, at least relax and just be present and be kind and not be so judgmental, of myself and others. And I think if you meditate more, if you're practicing Dharma more, you get a sense of this peace, this joy, this connectedness to everything, this wholeness. And when you're connected to that, you don't really need hope, because you know that this is our natural nature. Our natural nature is wholeness and goodness. And that, fear or hope is just a veil obscuring that natural perfection, that natural wholeness, that natural goodness that is already there. So, yeah, duality is a state of a separation. Hope and fear is a state of separation. But if you're not connected, if you're not plugged in, which sometimes we don't feel plugged in, then a little bit of hope is not bad, mixed with equanimity. Not too much craving, not too much. Just to learn to be open to our pain, to our imperfections, to our fears, to try and be stable and balanced. And another thing I've realized with practice is that happiness is an important factor of happiness. Watering seeds of happiness in yourself. And like I used to be very black and white, like, if it wasn't Dharma, it wasn't necessary, like I wouldn't go to a movie, or I'd feel guilty that I was going to a movie or a mall or for coffee, or, I was really rigid. And it wasn't happy. I was being so hard on myself, or I'd just be like, I have to work in the slum all the time. I can't have any off time. And it wasn't balanced, And then some people at the other extreme, they're like, oh, I just want to feel good. And that also has its own downfalls, that after a while of living like that, you feel empty. You feel your life is empty. It's not particularly fulfilling, just endlessly shopping or endlessly, like, those couples that are always renovating their home and they never stop, because it's like if they're afraid if they stop that they might have to look at their marriage, or the fact that, they don't know what it's all about. And maybe we'll never know what it's all about. But it's, just invite the possibility in that maybe life does have a bigger meaning than nice doorknobs. So it's like that balance of like connecting in with the bigger picture and not running away from the possibility, the inner arisings. And then sometimes we're going a little crazy on the inside. We've been looking too much. We've been obsessing too much, especially if you're a person who has a sharp mind and can't shut it up. Then, go and plant a garden, and get back into the world. I've seen some people, they think that they can become a great meditator, and then they go into a monastery and they're going nuts because they can't shut their mind down. So those people, we send them into the garden. or we make them the head cook. Um, so anyway, yes, I've spoken about hope and equanimity and, you know, that bliss, that joy of finally resting in your own natural goodness that makes hope redundant because it's already there, you know. And I just thought I would just connect in with the 7 factors of awakening. I won't do them all this week, but I thought I'd do the first 3. So the 7 factors of awakening are like, it's like when you get on the freeway of enlightenment, you know, and they assist you, they propel you forward. So, you know, sometimes people have been practicing for years and just wonder why they've made no progress. Usually it's got to do with a lack of continuity. You know, like they go to the Dharma Center or to the talk when they feel they need it, when they're stressed out, when things are bad. But when things are good, they'll just go back to watching Netflix and, you know, put the monk just right. What is it? Just when it comes up on your phone that your monks are meditating and your monks are talking, just off. Like a left swipe on Tinder or something. Gone. Be gone. Be gone, monk. I know Tinder because I have friends who've disrobed and told me about it, not because I'm there. just for clarification. 7 factors of mindfulness. Okay, so the first one is mindfulness, which most of us know a great deal about. Although we might just think mindfulness means living in the present moment, when actually mindfulness means right awareness of an object of virtue. So it's not just about mindfully consuming chocolate or drinking wine or, you know, cheating on your partner. No, that's not okay. Certainly if you don't have your partner's agreement anyway. The second one is investigation of dharmas. Third one is energy. Fourth one is joy or rapture. 5th one is tranquility. 6th is concentration. 7 is equanimity. So with mindfulness, we're aware of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which are the body, the sensations of the body, our mind, and objects of mind that arise in our awareness. And, you know, in meditation, where depending on what objective of foundation of mindfulness we've chosen, we might be aware of particular sensations in the body. We might meditate for a few minutes on each part of the body, like the head, the chest, the right arm, the left arm, you know, and so forth. And we might observe sensations arising, abiding, and dissolving. It's really interesting when you do that for a long period of time. You just notice so much of the craving and suffering happens in our head. It's not really the sensation that's the problem. It's the, why do I have this? You know, as soon as we just observe it without this me, it's a lot less pain. We realize it's the me, the grasping. I don't want to feel this way. Or it's like, ooh, I like that. Yeah. So when we just observe, like how can I say, we're having more of a mind of equanimity, these sensations are not so bad. And then when you have the cessation of craving, there is a certain kind of bliss that comes, you know, because there's no more holding on. There's no more me. And then, you know, in daily life, like when you're walking, when you're washing dishes, try to have mindfulness. Maybe just put up a little sign, you know, breathing in, I know I am breathing in, breathing out, I let go, or something, you know, just to remind you when you drive, you know, kind of breathing in, I'm aware, do I need to really use the car? You know, just a little reminder, even in the bathroom when you're on the loo, you know. Thich Nhat Hanh has a whole collection of gathas, little mantras, little awareness reminders you can put on your mirror, on your bathroom, just to remind yourself to come back into the present moment. And be aware of what your body is doing. You know, when you're in the street and you're looking at people and you're noticing, you just notice, okay, there's a person, there's input. And not immediately kind of jumping into a whole storyline. Just be fully aware of things arising, abiding, and dissolving. There's a certain kind of freedom in that of having a little bit of control over your own mind. And then, you know, with investigation, we observe the breath from beginning to end. it's actually a very deep process. How is my breath? What is the quality of my breath? Somebody's alarm is going off. Is it long? Is it slow? Is it short? Is it deep or shallow? Fast? How is my breath? Hopefully that will end soon. And just observing like where in the body your breath reaches. How deep does your breath go? Are you breathing in a tense way, or are you breathing in a way that opens up your chest and your diaphragm is engaged? And when we investigate fully, we get insight. We see that a lot of suffering is how we react to the input that's coming in. The input is neither good or bad, but mostly we're putting our own story on it, like, I don't want to feel this way, or I really want to feel nice. Don't waste a lot of time trying to recreate a pleasant sensation that you had, a blissful sensation you had in meditation. Just be present with one taste, with equanimity about what experiences arise. Don't try to recreate the same blissful one again and again. And then energy is a really important factor of awakening. Joy and energy, the next one as well. Energy is just the dedication to practice, to return to practice. And when your meditation's going well, it's easy to want to return to meditation. But when it's not going well, the meditation cushion's getting some serious dust on it, The thing is, in my experience, actually longer meditation gives deeper insight, like 40 minutes a day. Start small, but go longer. My experience, it takes a while for the mind to really settle down. A lot of people never get to the deeper mind states because they're just doing 20 minutes. And then some people can't do longer than that. And that's actually really good for them because they start to kind of get anxious and restless if they sit too long. So only you know what's good for you. But my experience is, 45 minutes is a good length of time. And without too much physical pain, and that thing of 45 minutes sitting, 45 minutes walking is a really good alternation so you don't get a lot of pain in your body. And, nothing good happens just by making effort on one day and no effort the rest of the week. Like, you won't get a check if you make effort on one day or you get a very small check. Effort on one day and no work on the rest of the week, Whereas meditation, if you put in the energy, the good things come back if you're regular and you're committed. And then, as a result of that effort comes rapture, comes joy. And some of us don't get that until we do a retreat, And even then some people get into really blissful states of meditation quickly, and other people just get a sense of warmth and happiness and peace. And some people just realize they're kind of messed up, But either way, it's all part of the practice. The practice is not just about joy and love and light, but I think it's not a bad thing to want to get a little bit of happiness, even if it's small things, because if you don't have happiness, if you don't have lightness now and then, it's hard to find, you can get quite down and it's hard to find the momentum to have a good life, I think sometimes Buddhists dismiss temporary happiness as being unimportant, but you could just be depressed and not really know it. You think you've got renunciation, but really you're depressed, or you're dismissing your own and others' emotions and experience, invalidating your own truth, so to speak, your own needs, your own emotional needs. So be careful, because relative existence does matter, having enough to eat, having a clean water, having equality, gender equality, racial equality, human rights, these things absolutely matter, because without these things, without this relative world in a reasonable state, we can't practice well. The Dharma can't thrive. You think you're going to be practicing well in a nuclear bomb shelter while the rest of the world goes to hell? I don't think so. We need each other. We are intimately connected. and our well-being, our destiny is tied together. So to be spiritual is to understand and work with the whole well-being of the world as well as your own well-being. Both. We need time for both. Yeah. And that's where, the idea of joy, Dharma practice shouldn't make you miserable all the time anyway. Sometimes, okay. If you're really doing some work and you're looking at some messy things, and it shouldn't just be about bliss all the time, about happiness all the time. Dharma practice shows you the truth, gives you insight. That can be hard, not always happy. And that's why I say find a balance, do some things that also make you happy, like a bit of yoga or, a bit of gardening, something wholesome, that's not an addiction, it's not unwise or just based on sensory pleasure. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with having an ice cream now or then or going to a movie, but it's about balance, But eventually the joy of meditation surpasses a lot of the kind of joys that we know now, which is so temporary. But be kind to yourself, and try not to be so judgmental of others, because everybody's path is unique. We don't know what roads other people have walked to get where they are. And the more I'm privileged to hear people's inner workings and inner secrets, the more I realize a lot of people have a lot more burdens than I do and have walked a much harder path, So don't be so judgmental before you know someone's story, and focus on the log in your own eye, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's all I need to say about I'll cover that in coming weeks, the other awakening factors and the idea of hope. But yeah, Martin Luther King said, in the end, I may not get there with you, but I've seen the top of the mountain. So we have to keep that vision of what is possible for humanity, what is possible for compassion, what is possible for awakening, what is the goal, what we most deeply value. But we also have to enjoy the present moment, enjoy the gift of being fully alive, and realize that enlightenment is a long road, and just do the best we can to bring these things that we most deeply value into every moment, into the way we make a cup of tea, into how we engage with our mother, our neighbors, everybody, even the people on the other side of the picket line. Because it's really interesting. I've seen, old Nazis, let's call it white supremacists. I've seen some of them years later realize they were quite mistaken and become friends with activists, people of color. Rowena doesn't look completely convinced. But yeah, I've seen some of them can change, and a lot of them usually are coming from a place of fear and misinformation. I'm not saying that what they're doing is okay or that their point of view is acceptable. It's really not acceptable. But there is still it's just really easy to get polarized and violent. I mean, I really dislike the alt-right, and I'm appalled by their behavior. But I think, we also have to be aware there's a lot of racist white liberals. And even people of color can also be down on each other, as we see with the caste system in India. So, there's a lot of inner work that has to be done. But yeah, we've seen the mountaintop. We've got to keep a vision of the mountaintop, even if it's a long road. And to keep, I think that's another thing that we underestimate in the West, because we're so individualistic, is the power of community, the power of brotherhood and sisterhood, to keep that vision of hope alive, especially if you're just surrounded by people in your daily life who are just, you're having interactions with them that are about money and productivity, and it's not necessarily particularly spiritually fulfilling. To have a spiritual community or like-minded friends who you can be yourself with is really important, to keep a vision of that hope, that ideal alive, and to meet, the Buddha did say, meet regularly with people who inspire you, who are ahead of you, noble friendship, who are ahead of you on the path, And books and, books and a chat room will never be the same as a wise person who you can ask questions to. And that's why it's worth investing in living sanghas, and living monasteries, living traditions of compassion and awakening. So yes, I think that's what I have to say. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Hang on. You could write it in the thingy if you want, or you could just wave your hand and unmute yourself, or I'll unmute you. Or you're all just completely content and blissed out. Go ahead, Tara.
This is like crazy. I feel like this talk that you just gave is everything that is on my mind right now. Like, I just took a little retreat, and of course on the third day is when I finally settled down and I'm ready to be on retreat, and it ended. So I've just continued practice since it ended on Sunday, and I've been sitting a lot every day, and I realized that I've been concentrating on a lot of wisdom and not compassion, like almost at all. I'm just going to admit it. Like I just haven't been doing like compassion practices or just and I find myself like, even though I'm practicing with a lot of wisdom, like I can still be mean, and I can still have these preferences, and I want things to be fixed right now, and because we can know how something works, like I expect the whole world to fix it right now because we can know. And so when I'm in the just wisdom, I am impatient, and it's not full. It's not wisdom. It's not full, And I've been doing, working. I realized that, wow, Tara, you haven't been working with compassion at all. And just, it feels so different when you have the two wings of the bird, like the wisdom just isn't full without the compassion part. And I'm really feeling that right now. And about hope too. I kind of have this thing where it's just like, have an intention, throw it out into the world, and then let it go. And like, that's the way I sort of stay hopeful and not sort of clingy. But anyway, I realize I am clingy with like hope and things like that when I'm only in the wisdom side of things. But when I add in the compassion, then there's like a patience that I can feel, and it doesn't feel like I manically have to fix everything, So it's just been sort of cool to be with that, like in these past few days, and remembering.
Yeah.
It's like the teacher on the retreat that I was at, he said it's an endless cycle of forgetting and remembering, and I'm like, true that, it is an endless cycle. So I'm in the remembering part, and it's sweet and it's poignant, and yeah, it's amazing that your talk has everything to do with what I was feeling. So thank you for giving it to us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Yeah, it is true, and I think Dharma practice, even for teachers, is a process of forgetting and remembering. And it's just, I think we've got lifetimes of conditioning about delusion and selfishness, and it's not like the culture we're living in, a capitalist culture is particularly. There are benefits to living in Western culture, with a welfare state, probably more so in Australia, but, the idea of human rights, even if it's not completely the lived reality. But we do need to, and that's why we have community as well, that we're forgetting and remembering together. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you had that time to do retreat, and I hope you get more time. Does anyone else have anything to say before we end? Nope. Okay, cool. It's been lovely to speak with you all. I'm not sure if I'm gonna take 1 or 2 weeks off. I'll put it on Facebook. I might change the time to get more people to come, but let's see. I will be in touch. And thanks for coming. It's been a lovely thing to have this kind of intimate space with people where they get to ask questions and I can see what's going on for them. Otherwise I'm just sending it out to the universe and not really knowing what's going on for lay people, and apart from the lay friends I have that I meet with now and then. And it's nice to know, that there are people who think the way I, share my values, I guess, and see Buddhism in a different way, that it has to be more humanized and a little more flexible. So I wish you all much joy with your practice, and I'll be around. I'll be back. Take care, and thank you. And oh, by the way, if you can make a donation, I very much appreciate it because I live on donations. So thank you. All the best.